The birth of the twins was nothing short of a miracle. Their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Donovan, were billionaires who had waited 4 years to have children. When they finally had twin girls, it felt like a dream come true. The twins were born in a top-class private hospital, surrounded by the best doctors and nurses. From the moment they arrived, everyone was amazed by how beautiful they were. Their soft skin, tiny fingers, and shiny brown eyes made them look like little angels. Even the nurses said they had never seen babies as perfect as these two. For the first year of their lives, they were the joy of the Donovan mansion. The staff adored them, their parents spoiled them, and their laughter filled every corner of the house. But everything changed on their first birthday. The Donovans threw a grand party to celebrate. The garden was decorated with balloons, flowers, and fairy lights, and guests from all over came to see the twins. The girls were dressed in matching white gowns, looking like little princesses. Everyone was smiling and enjoying the party, but then something strange happened. As the twins sat in their high chairs, surrounded by their parents and guests, they opened their eyes wide in excitement. The room fell silent. Their brown eyes were gone. Instead, their eyes had turned a sparkling blue, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It wasn't the usual blue eyes people were used to. It was bright, shiny, and almost glowing, like precious jewels. The guests started whispering, "What's wrong with their eyes? Why do they look like that? This is strange. It's not normal." Mr. and Mrs. Donovan were stunned. They didn't understand what was happening. The twins, too young to know anything was wrong, just clapped their hands and giggled at the candles on their cake. The once admired twins now made people uneasy. Their unusual eyes looked so strange, and some couldn't help but feel afraid. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan couldn't handle the growing unease surrounding their twins. What had started as admiration and joy turned into whispers and fear after their first birthday. The strange transformation of their eyes had not only unsettled the family, but had also become the talk of everyone who knew them. The Donovans were ashamed and confused, unsure of how to explain their daughter's unnatural change. But their fear reached a terrifying peak one quiet night. It was around midnight when a piercing scream echoed through the Donovan mansion, jolting everyone awake. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan rushed out of their bedroom, their hearts pounding, and hurried toward the source of the noise, the twins' nursery. When they arrived, they found Veronica, the twins' nanny, trembling in a corner of the room. Her face was pale, and she struggled to speak, pointing a shaking finger at the twins, who sat in their crib. The room felt charged with an eerie tension, and everyone, from the parents to the household staff, stared at her, demanding an explanation. They were glowing. Veronica finally stammered, her voice breaking. "I was feeding them, and suddenly, light started coming out of their faces. Their eyes, oh God, their eyes were shining so brightly, I couldn't look directly at them." The room fell silent. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan exchanged worried glances with the staff. No one could make sense of what Veronica was saying, but the sheer terror in her voice was enough to send chills down their spines. The twins, meanwhile, sat quietly in their crib, giggling and playing as if nothing unusual had happened. In the days that followed, tension in the house grew. Staff began avoiding the nursery, whispering amongst themselves about what the twins might be. Veronica refused to enter the room again, no matter how much she was begged or bribed. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan, overwhelmed with fear and shame, considered every possibility, from medical explanations to something far more sinister. A week later, another strange incident occurred. Mrs. Donovan, trying to ease her guilt, decided to spoil the twins even more. She had just returned from an expensive shopping spree, buying them another bag of toys. Hoping to surprise them, she quietly entered their nursery with the bag in hand. but as soon as she stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. The twins were sitting side by side on the floor, their faces glowing with innocent smiles. Their eyes, however, were not just sparkling blue anymore. They were radiating a soft, pulsing light, filling the room with an unnatural glow. The light danced off the walls, casting strange shadows that made the air feel heavy. Mrs. Donovan froze, her hands trembling, as the bag of toys slipped from her grip and hit the floor with a loud thud. The twins turned their glowing eyes toward her, their smiles widening, as if they knew she was watching them. Overcome with fear, Mrs. Donovan stumbled out of the room, her heart racing. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was undeniably wrong with her daughters, and the strange occurrences were becoming impossible to hide. Her mind raced with questions. What were her daughters becoming? A few weeks later, Mr. Donovan, unable to bear the fear and shame any longer, he convinced himself and his wife that there was only one way to move forward. Early one morning, he loaded their car with a few belongings and prepared for a long journey. In the back seat, their twin daughters giggled innocently. Hours later, as they approached a deserted stretch of road surrounded by thick bushes and trees, Mr. Donovan broke the silence. "We've gone far enough," he said, his voice low and trembling. "I think we can do it now." Mrs. Donovan nodded silently, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't respond, but her shaky hands betrayed her fear and guilt. Together, they parked the car by the side of the road and stepped out, carrying the twins in their arms. The girls, still smiling and giggling, reached out for their parents, trusting them completely. Without a word, Mr. Donovan and his wife walked to the edge of the thick bush, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they were about to do. They placed the twins gently on the ground, wrapping them in their blankets. For a brief moment, Mrs. Donovan hesitated, her maternal instinct screaming at her to stop. But Mr. Donovan grabbed her hand, his face a mask of cold determination. They turned away and hurried back to the car, the sound of their daughter's laughter fading as they drove off. A week later, the Donovans returned to their city with a dark plan to cover their tracks. They entered their mansion with fake bandages wrapped around their legs and arms, claiming they had been involved in a terrible car accident. "We lost everything," Mr. Donovan told the staff and friends who came to check on them. "Our daughters, they didn't make it." Their story was met with shock and sympathy, but no one questioned it. The city mourned the loss of the twins, unaware of the cruel truth. Meanwhile, miles away, a young widow named Madame Janet was driving through the countryside in the early hours of the morning. She had left her small home to dispose of some trash when she noticed something unusual by the side of the road near the bushes. Stopping her car, she stepped out and moved closer. To her shock, she found two tiny babies wrapped in blankets, their faces pale but peaceful. The sight brought tears to her eyes. She quickly scooped them up, her heart aching as she held their small, fragile bodies. Madame Janet was a woman who knew the pain of loss. Years ago, she had lost her husband and her only child in a ghastly motor accident. Her once vibrant home had become a place of sorrow, and she had resigned herself to living alone. But as she looked at the abandoned twins, something stirred in her heart, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Without hesitation, she carried the babies to her car and drove home. She didn't know who they were or where they had come from, but one thing was certain: she couldn't leave them to fend for themselves. From that moment on, Madame Janet vowed to protect them, no matter the cost. Madame Janet, now a proud mother, decided to name the twins Clara and Carol. She was in awe of the girls' beauty, but her heart skipped a beat the first time she noticed their unique blue eyes. It wasn't just their color. It was their glow, a sparkle that seemed to hold a mysterious depth. Madame Janet tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light, but one evening, while feeding them, she witnessed something even stranger. A feint of light seemed to radiate from their faces. Despite her initial fear, Madame Janet's love for Clara and Carol only grew stronger. She kept their peculiarities to herself, raising them with all the care and attention she could muster. The twins grew up to be intelligent, kind-hearted, and full of life. When it was time for them to start secondary school, Clara and Carol quickly became the talk of the institution. Their stunning blue eyes drew stares wherever they went, but it wasn't just their appearance that stood out. The twins excelled in all their subjects, particularly mathematics and science, often surprising their teachers with their brilliance. However, their rapid success didn't sit well with everyone. Michael, the son of a wealthy businessman and a long-standing top performer in the school, saw Clara and Carol as a threat. Michael had always prided himself on being the best in academics, and the arrival of the twins challenged his reign. One afternoon, as the twins were leaving their mathematics class, Michael cornered them in the hallway. His expression was cold, and his voice carried an edge of menace. "When did you even join this school?" he spat, glaring at them. "You've just arrived, and suddenly you're the best at everything. I've always been the top student in math and science, and I'm not about to let you take that away from me." Clara and Carol exchanged a nervous glance, but said nothing. Michael stepped closer, his tone lowering to a threatening whisper. "If you don't step back and give me my space, I'll make your life miserable in this school. Do you hear me?" His words struck a chord with the twins, reminding them of the bullying they had endured in primary school. Back then, their classmates had mocked them for being different, and their brilliance in academics had only made things worse. Determined to avoid another cycle of cruelty, Clara and Carol nodded in agreement. "We understand, Michael," Clara said softly. We'll lie low for you." Satisfied, Michael smirked and walked away, leaving the twins standing in silence. Though they had agreed to back down, a spark of defiance lingered in Clara's and Carol's hearts. That evening, Clara and Carol sat down with their mother, Madame Janet, to discuss what had happened at school. They were hesitant at first, not wanting to worry her, but they knew they couldn't keep Michael's threat to themselves. "Mom," Clara began cautiously, "something happened at school today." Janet turned to face her daughters, her brows furrowed with concern. "What is it, my loves? Did someone hurt you?" Carol shook her head. "Not exactly, but there's this boy, Michael. He's been the top student in school for a long time, and now that we're doing well, he feels threatened. Today, he cornered us after class and told us to stay out of his way, or else he'd make our lives miserable." Janet's face darkened with anger. "What? How dare he? Who does he think he is to threaten you like that?" she exclaimed, her voice rising. "I must go to your school and deal with this immediately. Nobody has the right to frustrate my girls." Clara placed a calming hand on her mother's arm, smiling softly. "Mom, you don't need to stress over this," she said. "We agreed to lie low for now, not because we're scared of him, but because it's easier to let him feel like he's in control. It's not worth causing a big scene." Carol nodded in agreement. "We just want to avoid unnecessary drama. Trust us, Mom. We know how to handle this." Janet's anger softened as she looked at her daughters, proud of their maturity, but still feeling a protective urge to intervene. "If you think that's the best way to handle it, I'll respect your decision," she said. "But I want you both to promise me something." "What's that, Mom?" Carol asked. "If he ever crosses the line, if he ever does something more than just talk, you must tell me immediately," Janet said firmly. "I can't stand by and watch anyone mistreat you. You're my girls, and no one has the right to take away your peace." The twins smiled at their mother's fierce love and nodded in agreement. "We promise, Mom," Clara said. Janet sighed and pulled them both into a tight hug. "You're so much stronger and wiser than I sometimes give you credit for. But remember, I'm always here if you need me." As the twins hugged her back, they felt reassured. Michael might have his moment, but they knew their mother had their backs no matter what. A few days before their promotion exams, Clara and Carol arrived at school, ready to give their best. However, their day quickly took a turn when their mathematics teacher, Mr. Ordu, barred them from entering his class. "You two are not allowed in my classroom this week," Mr. Ordu declared sternly, standing firmly at the door. Clara and Carol exchanged confused glances. "But why, sir? What did we do wrong?" Clara asked hesitantly. Mr. Ordu frowned, his voice laced with accusation. "I found out that you copied the answers to your last assignment directly from the textbook. That kind of behavior is unacceptable. As punishment, you'll miss my classes for an entire week." Carol gasped in disbelief. "But sir, that's not true. We didn't copy anything. We solved those problems ourselves." "Enough," Mr. Ordu cut her off. "I've made my decision, and it's final." No amount of pleading or explanation could change his mind. Feeling both hurt and humiliated, the twins left the class, their spirits dampened. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning. Over the next few days, all their science teachers began treating them harshly. They were excluded from practical sessions, denied feedback on their assignments, and unfairly reprimanded for minor issues. The twins couldn't understand why their teachers had suddenly turned against them, but they decided not to tell Madame Janet. They didn't want to worry her, especially during such an important time. When exam week finally arrived, the challenges only intensified. Michael, the wealthy and arrogant classmate who had been bullying them for weeks, seemed to make it his mission to ruin their exam experience. On the first day, Clara and Carol walked into the exam hall to find drops of water strategically placed on their chairs. Unsuspecting, they sat down, only to hear a burst of laughter from their classmates. "Looks like someone had an accident," one student teased loudly. The twins quickly realized what had happened. It was a cruel prank designed to embarrass them and make it look like they had menstruated on themselves. Their faces flushed with humiliation, but they refused to let the taunts distract them. They focused on their papers, determined to push through. On another day, Michael switched their pens with malfunctioning ones. During the exam, the pens stopped working, forcing Clara and Carol to scramble for spares. They lost valuable time and struggled to regain their focus, but they persevered, refusing to let his antics ruin their performance. Despite the mounting distractions and challenges, the twins stayed resilient. It wasn't until after the exams that they discovered the truth. Michael had bribed their teachers to mistreat them. A classmate, unable to keep the secret any longer, confessed to them privately. Michael paid them off, the student revealed, guilt evident in their voice. He wanted to sabotage you so he could stay on top. Clara and Carol were stunned but not defeated. Instead of letting anger consume them, they chose to channel their frustration into determination. When the results were finally announced, the entire school was shocked. Despite all the obstacles, Clara and Carol had outperformed everyone in mathematics and their science subjects. Their brilliance earned them top scores, and to everyone's astonishment, they were awarded a prestigious scholarship to study abroad. As they stood on the stage during the award ceremony, the twins couldn't help but smile. They had faced unfair treatment and bullying, but their hard work and resilience had prevailed. Michael's plans had backfired spectacularly, and Clara and Carol's light shone brighter than ever. 10 years had passed, and the once thriving city was now gripped by a devastating plague. The disease struck without warning, killing both young and old with alarming speed. Within days, it became clear that no one was safe. Entire families were wiped out, and fear consumed the hearts of everyone. The hospitals were overwhelmed with patients, their corridors filled with cries of pain and desperation. Medical staff worked tirelessly, but their efforts seemed futile against the relentless onslaught of the disease. Meanwhile, mortuaries overflowed with the dead, forcing many to resort to mass burials. The city, once vibrant and full of life, now felt like a shadow of its former self. Madame Janet, now older but still strong in spirit, watched the chaos unfold with growing panic. Unable to sit idle, she picked up her phone and called her daughters, Clara and Carol, who were now accomplished medical doctors and renowned inventors residing abroad. When they answered her call, Janet's voice trembled with urgency. "My daughters, something terrible is happening here. A deadly disease has taken over the city. It's killing people so fast that no one seems to survive it. The hospitals are full, the mortuaries are overflowing. It's like a nightmare." Clara's voice was filled with concern. "Mom, how long has this been going on? When did it start?" Janet sighed, struggling to find the words. "I can't even explain it properly. It spread so suddenly like wildfire. But listen to me, my girls. You're not just medical doctors, you're inventors. You've saved countless lives with your innovations. If anyone can find a solution to this, it's you." Carol and Clara exchanged a determined glance, even though they were miles apart from their mother. Clara spoke with conviction. "Mom, don't worry. We'll be on the next flight home. We'll be there in 48 hours. Carol's voice carried a note of reassurance. "We promise, Mom. We'll do everything in our power to help. People deserve to live their normal lives again, and we'll make sure of it." Janet's heart swelled with relief. "Thank you, my dears. I believe in you. The whole city needs you now." As they ended the call, Clara and Carol immediately began preparing for their journey back to their homeland. They packed their advanced medical equipment, research notes, and everything they could think of that might help combat the mysterious plague. The clock was ticking, but Clara and Carol were ready to face the challenge head-on. They weren't just returning as Janet's daughters, they were returning as the city's last hope. Upon their arrival in the city, Clara and Carol were met with a grim reality. The plague ravaging their homeland was unlike anything they had encountered before. There was no known medication, no identifiable cause, and no clear solution. The disease was a mystery, and its rapid spread left them both alarmed and determined. "We have to act fast," Clara said with urgency as they entered their family home. Carol nodded in agreement. "Lives are at stake, Clara. We don't have the luxury of time." That night, the twins locked themselves in their makeshift lab, working tirelessly. Medical textbooks, research papers, and their advanced equipment were spread across the room as they brainstormed solutions. Sleep was a distant thought as they tested theories, analyzed symptoms, and searched for answers. Word of their return spread quickly throughout the city. News outlets buzzed with stories of the remarkable twins with sparkling blue eyes, now famous medical doctors and inventors, who had come back to save their hometown from the plague. People clung to this glimmer of hope, eagerly awaiting a miracle. By the next morning, Clara and Carol had developed a treatment plan based on their research and medical expertise. They set up an emergency station, the state hospital, and began administering their newly formulated remedy. Crowds of patients, frail and desperate, lined up to receive their help. By the end of the day, countless lives had been saved. The once dismal atmosphere of the city began to lift as news of the twins' success spread like wildfire. People hailed them as heroes, and their names were on everyone's lips. 2 days later, after working non-stop, Clara and Carol decided to take a brief rest. They granted a press audience, where reporters flooded them with questions about their work, their return, and their miraculous efforts to save the city. As they spoke to the press, a commotion erupted at the hospital entrance. A young man, looking frantic and disheveled, rushed into the building, demanding to see the twins. "I need to see the new doctors," he shouted, his voice tinged with urgency. Hearing the commotion, the twins turned toward the entrance, and as their eyes met the young man's, recognition flashed across their faces. "Michael," they chorused in surprise. The man stopped in his tracks, equally astonished. "Clara, Carol," he exclaimed, his voice filled with a mix of shock and emotion. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The twins and Michael, who had once been schoolmates and shared a tumultuous history, now stood face to face after years apart. "What are you doing here, Michael?" Clara asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and caution. Michael took a deep breath, his expression one of desperation. "I need your help, please, it's urgent." Clara and Carol exchanged a glance, their professional instincts kicking in. Despite their past, they knew they couldn't turn away someone in need. "Come with us," Carol said firmly. "Tell us everything." Carol shook her head, her expression skeptical. "Michael, why can't you bring your parents here to the hospital? This is where we have all the necessary equipment and resources. Why must we go to your house to treat them?" Michael's face was a mixture of desperation and pleading. "Please, Carol, it's not that simple," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "My father has a severe condition that causes his system to react negatively to the hospital environment. The last time he was in a hospital, his health deteriorated rapidly. If he comes here, it might make things worse for him. I'm begging you, please help me save my parents. They're all I have left in this world. Please don't say no." Clara, who had been listening intently, folded her arms and narrowed her eyes. "Michael, you have to understand our position here. Our mom has always warned us not to go anywhere without informing her first. And considering this involves a place we're unfamiliar with, we can't take any risks." Carol nodded in agreement, her tone firm but calm. "If we're to come with you, we'd have to make arrangements. Our mom will need to accompany us, and I'm certain our security agents will insist on coming along too. We can't jeopardize our safety, especially with everything going on in the city right now." Michael's expression softened as he nodded earnestly. "I understand, and I'm okay with all of your arrangements. Bring whoever you need. I just want my parents to have the best chance at surviving this. Please, Clara, Carol, I trust you." Clara exchanged a look with her sister, her gaze thoughtful. "All right, Michael," she said finally. "We'll speak to our mom and finalize the arrangements. But know this, we're doing this because lives are at stake. We need to ensure everyone's safety, including yours." Michael sighed in relief, gratitude washing over his face. Thank you so much. I'll make sure everything is ready for your arrival." As Michael left to prepare, the twins turned to each other. Carol's voice was low but firm. "Do you think this is the right decision?" Clara gave a small nod. "I don't know what's waiting for us, but if we can save lives, it's worth the risk. Let's inform Mom and prepare ourselves for anything." As Clara and Carol stepped into the grand sitting room, their gaze fell upon Michael's parents, lying motionless on stretchers. The sight was heartbreaking. They appeared deathly ill, their frail bodies unable to move a muscle. Clara and Carol approached cautiously, their medical instincts kicking in. But as they leaned closer to examine the couple, something extraordinary happened. Their unique blue eyes began to glow, emitting a brilliant light that filled the room. The sudden flash startled everyone present. Michael, Janet, and the household staff instinctively shielded their eyes, overwhelmed by the dazzling light. In the midst of this, a miracle unfolded. Michael's parents' eyes fluttered open, and colour returned to their pale faces. Their weak limbs began to regain strength as they slowly sat up, looking healthier than they had in years. Gasps echoed around the room, but one of the house staff, an elderly woman with a weathered face, stood frozen in shock. His voice trembled as he pointed at the twins. Who are you? Your blue eyes, and that light. It looked so familiar, too familiar. Clara and Carol glanced at each other, confused yet intrigued by the man's reaction. Before they could respond, another flash of light emanated from their eyes, illuminating the room once more. This time, it was Mrs. Donovan, Michael's mom, who spoke, her voice shaky, but filled with a sudden realization. I think these might be our children. The twins we abandoned 23 years ago. Her words hung heavily in the air, stunning everyone present. Janet's eyes widened in disbelief. What? Are you serious? I know you're sick, but claiming my children as yours. That's a symptom I haven't seen before, she retorted, her tone laced with both anger and incredulity. Mr. Donovan, Michael's dad, now sitting upright, turned to his wife, his face a mix of regret and hope. No, Janet, please hear us out, he said, his voice pleading. Their eyes, that light, it's unmistakable. We're sorry for what we did, but it's possible it's likely that they are our daughters. Clara and Carol stood in stunned silence, their minds racing. Could this be true? Could these people, who appeared as strangers, really be their biological parents? Janet, however, wasn't ready to back down. Her protective instincts flared as she stepped forward. Listen to me. I raised these girls as my own. I have loved and cared for them since the day I found them abandoned. They are my daughters, and now, out of nowhere, you want to claim them. After all these years. Mrs. Donovan broke down into tears, her voice choked with emotion. We've lived with regret every single day since that night. We thought we were protecting ourselves, but we made the worst mistake of our lives. Mr. Donovan nodded, his expression pained. Please, help us heal not just from this illness, but from the burden of our past. We are ready to make amends. Janet looked at Clara and Carol, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the twins, waiting for their response. Clara and Carol exchanged a glance before turning to Janet, their voices trembling with a mix of curiosity and concern. Mom, Clara began softly, is there something you're not telling us? Janet's composure crumbled, and tears began streaming down her face. Her voice cracked as she responded, yes, my daughters, there is. I'm not your biological mother. 23 years ago, I found you both abandoned on the side of the road near a thick bush. I couldn't leave you there, so I brought you home. From that moment, I gave you all the love, care, and support I could. You became my world. The room fell silent as Janet's confession sank in. Carol and Clara's expressions softened, and they smiled, though their eyes held a hint of sadness. So now, Carol said, her voice steady but firm, you expect us to just accept them as our parents. The people who abandoned us and played no part in our childhood or the struggles that made us who we are today. Before Janet could respond, Michael stepped forward, his face pale with shock. Dad, he asked hesitantly, are they really your children? Mr. Donovan lowered his head, guilt etched across his face. Yes, he admitted quietly, Clara and Carol are our biological daughters. After we abandoned them, we adopted you a year later to fill the void. We thought we could erase our mistake. Mrs. Donovan's voice broke as she added, we were terrified of their eyes. We couldn't understand what was happening, and we feared the judgment of our social class. We didn't know how to face the world with them, so we made the worst decision of our lives. The twins stood motionless, their emotions a whirlwind. Before they could respond, their eyes began to glow once more, releasing the same dazzling lightning that had become their signature. But this time, as the light faded, something extraordinary happened. Their blue eyes returned to a normal, human hue. In the same instant, Mr. and Mrs. Donovan groaned, clutching their bodies as their ailments returned. They slumped back onto the stretchers, visibly weaker than before. Carol took a deep breath and turned to Michael. "Take your parents to the hospital," she said firmly. "They need proper medical attention now, and we can't neglect the rest of the city. There are people out there counting on us." Michael looked torn, but nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Clara then turned to Janet and took her hand. "Mom," she said warmly, "you may not be our biological mother, but you are the only mother we've ever known. You stood by us when no one else did, gave us a home, and loved us unconditionally. We choose you. You will always be our mother, and we're staying with you forever." Janet broke into tears, overwhelmed with emotion, and embraced her daughters tightly. As Michael helped his parents out of the room, Clara and Carol turned their focus back to the urgent task ahead, saving the lives of countless others who desperately needed their help. Hello besties. What are your takeaways from this story? Please share them with us in the comments section. We'd love to hear your thoughts. There are even more interesting stories waiting for you on this channel. Check the description below for the links to those videos. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and become part of our amazing community. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all. I love you.